Hello and welcome to Fox 29's News Now on this Monday morning. The Mueller report is in, and now the real battle begins in Congress. President Trump called the special counsel's conclusion a complete exoneration, no evidence of collusion with Russia. But as Fox News correspondent Doug Luzader reports from Washington this morning, Democrats are already taking issue with that claim.
It's 7:11. President Trump called the special counsel's conclusions of the Mueller report a complete exoneration. No evidence of collusion with Russia.
But the battle in Congress isn't over, is it, Doug?
It is not. And this is what we have to go on so far. It's just kind of a 4-page summary of the Mueller report. But even just this is providing ample ammunition for both sides.
The president may have had a little spring in his step as he got off of Marine One yesterday at the White House.
I just want to tell you that America is the greatest place on earth. The greatest place on earth. Thank you very much.
The long-awaited report from special counsel Robert Mueller is in. So far, all we have seen is a 4-page summary from the Attorney General. But on the question of alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, the language is emphatic. The special counsel's investigation did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russia in its efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. But there is a second question, too. Did the president obstruct justice through the course of the investigation? According to the summary, the report presents evidence on both sides. And quoting Mueller here, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. And Attorney General William Barr determined over the weekend that there is not enough evidence to make an obstruction case. And that is the point that Democrats are seizing upon, especially House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler, who's carrying out investigations of his own.
The president has not been exonerated by the special counsel, yet the Attorney General has decided not to go further or apparently to share those findings with the public. We cannot simply rely on what may be a hasty, partisan interpretation of the facts.
And there's going to be a real push now to have Attorney General William Barr testify before Congress and to get him to turn over the complete Mueller report. It sounds like that's going to happen, the report being turned over to the public, at least portions of it. Some of it will no doubt have to be redacted, and Barr has indicated that they're kind of going through that process now. It may take a while.
It's interesting that Robert Mueller spent 2 years on this, and then he lets the Attorney General interpret obstruction of justice. Why didn't he just say it?
Yeah,
yes or no?
You know, it's a good question, and look, I think he's run into some criticism for that, saying that was kind of your job, is to determine whether this should be prosecuted or not. But you know, it really kind of invites a question as to whether you can obstruct justice when there was no underlying wrongdoing. And I think that's kind of what the Attorney General is getting at. But look, that decision, though, by the Attorney General is going to raise hackles by Democrats. There's no question.
Hackles for sure. We'll see you again tomorrow, Doug.
And moving on to business, what doesn't Shaq do? He's making history by getting his pizza on. Fox Business Network's Tracy Carrasco has more.
All right, Tracy's back, and you're telling us now. Good to see you. I love that pink.
Good morning.
Shaquille O'Neal has a new job. What's he selling?
Yes, Shaq is going to be on the board and also a brand ambassador for Papa John's.
Oh.
So he's really kind of going to be the face of the pizza chain. So kind of an interesting move for him. He said in a statement on Friday, quote, "I'm excited to join the board and to help lead from the top while investing in 9 stores in my hometown of Atlanta." So we know Papa John's has had some issues lately, and they're trying to repair their image, and that's why they're bringing Shaq on board, hoping that he is the man to do so. A lot of people are saying, well, that's an interesting move for Shaq, but he does have experience with franchises. He's owned Krispy Kreme and Five Guys Burger franchises as well in the past, so that kind of makes sense there as why he'll be running his own franchises with Papa John's. So we'll see if this works. Already on Friday, shares of Papa John's up more than 6% at the close.
So people are liking this. Yeah, someone tweeted out.
They do.
He owns 9 Papa John's restaurants. He has a Krispy Kreme franchise, 27 Five Guys franchises, and a big fried chicken restaurant. So yeah, he knows what he's doing when it comes to franchises.
Not too shabby for Shaq.
It's going to be interesting to see him in the commercials.
I guess he's going to survive financially then.
Yeah, I don't think he's struggling.
Yeah. Yeah, the doofy Papa John's owner, he got the company into trouble, and they had to let him go.
Right.
Yep, and since all of that, the stock has been down by, I think, about 17%. So really the last year, when they've been trying to replace founder John Schnatter, who was really the face of Papa John's, they kind of scrubbed him from all of the marketing materials, from everything, when all of these issues started coming up, when he reportedly used a racial slur on a conference call after he made some comments about the NFL.
And the national anthem controversy. I just wonder, too, if Shaq is going to wear, like, the button-up red shirt that says Papa John's while he's holding pizzas. Like, he used to, like, in the commercials. He used to hold it. Oh, I'm Papa John.
We'll see. Tracy, it looks like you had a great time off. I didn't know you were such a country music fan, but we'll talk about that at another time.
Oh, look at you in your cowboy hat.
Yeah, looking good. Looking good. It looked like fun.
It does.
And as Kramer used to say, giddy up. All right, thank you.
And moving on to your Fox 29 weather authority. The Philadelphia area is slated for a mostly cloudy Monday with periods of rain in the afternoon. A few afternoon showers are expected to develop with temperatures reaching a high of 53 degrees. If we take a look at some current temps, we have 52 in Toms River, a chilly 36 degrees in Mount Pocono, 55 in Wildwood, 56 in Wilmington. Across the Northeast, we see temperatures as low as 27 in Toronto, 30 in Bangor, Maine, 54 in Ocean City. Compared to the larger U.S., we see an enviable 78 degrees down in Florida, 70 in Houston, 54 in San Fran. And looking ahead to our 7-day forecast, Tuesday looks a bit chillier, 47 degrees, though sunny, and a pretty decent Phillies home opener forecast for you, 60 degrees, partly cloudy, and temperatures will take a bit of a jump for the weekend, 70 on Friday, 71 on Saturday, mostly sunny skies, which looks good to us. And don't forget to download the latest version of the Fox 29 Weather Authority app to get the latest and greatest weather right at your home. And in local news happening today, New Jersey lawmakers will vote on a bill to legalize recreational marijuana. Lauren Johnson had this report from Mercer County this morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. The state's ACLU and the NAACP, just two recent groups to join on endorsing this legislation. And we're not sure if that's enough to help lawmakers make that decision here today on this vote. As of Friday, the bill is still 5 or 6 lawmakers short of obtaining the 21 vote majority needed in the Senate. Last Thursday, Governor Phil Murphy organized a news conference where roughly a dozen advocates and faith leaders from North and Central Jersey pressed lawmakers to support the legalization bill on the merits of the criminal justice reform elements. As of Friday afternoon, the Democratic-controlled Senate was a few votes shy of approving that bill. So apparently, over the weekend, the governor was working the phones, hoping to drum up enough support ahead of today's vote.
I did not get to the notion of legalizing adult use marijuana easily with 4 kids. It was not something that I sort of woke up and said, you know what, this is where I want to go. but I got there because of social injustice. And I'm here today for that reason.
Under the new law, the state would collect $42 per ounce of cannabis sold by weight. It would also allow for the dismissal of all convictions and pending charges for possessing or selling. Some critics believe the bill puts politics and money before people, and it will harm the community, especially our children. Vermont became the first state in the U.S. to approve recreational marijuana. New York and Connecticut will be debating a similar bill this year. Back to you guys.
So 41 votes in the Assembly and 21 in the Senate. That's what's needed to make recreational marijuana legal in New Jersey, as Lauren Johnson just mentioned. The vote is set for today, but not without controversy. The state director for Smart Approaches to Marijuana and a leader in the state assembly joined us on Good Day this morning to discuss the vote.
7:32, New Jersey could become the 11th state in the union to legalize recreational marijuana. Lawmakers are set to vote on this today, which would make it legal for people 21 and over. The bill, supported by Governor Phil Murphy, also imposes a $42 per ounce tax and expedites marijuana-related expungements. We'll explain what that means in just a second. But whether the votes are there to pass it or not, it remains to be seen. And there are strong opinions on both sides of this issue, of course. Abu Edwards, the state director for Smart Approaches to Marijuana, is here, and Deputy Speaker and Assemblyman John Brizzacelli joins us from Trenton, where the vote's going to be taken. Welcome to you both, so let's get right to it. John, why don't we start with you? Why are you for it?
Well, a lot of time has been spent understanding the issue. I think this time has come. Society has changed. People have largely spoken, and we learned great lessons looking back on history. Prohibition did not work, and I think we're at that point now with recreational marijuana. So it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Yeah, but it seems like it's almost inevitable. We'll become the 11th state to do this, and the states seem to be falling one by one. Why are you against it?
I believe that we need to take this situation very carefully. I think that people get mixed up that, you know, this is the Woodstock marijuana that people's grandmothers and people used to smoke. This is a hybrid, you know, marijuana that has up to 99.9% of THC. And I think that with this new drug on the market, we really need to take into consideration, especially the lessons learned from Colorado, how this has impacted communities, especially communities of color.
John, is this a higher grade, more powerful form of marijuana?
Well, you know, this very good point was just made. I'm sorry I couldn't be in the studio with both of you today. We're looking at Colorado very closely. There's also issues of consumer safety. You know, we want to get people away from doing business with strangers in the darkness on a corner. We want to make sure that if marijuana is going to be legal, that a person buying it knows exactly what they're buying, knows what the strength is, knows where it came from. There's a lot to be said for that. Plus, and again, getting people away from the interaction with bad people on street corners who would try to sell you something in addition to marijuana is a great concern for us. Yeah. And getting this into the light of day, I think, is going to benefit everyone.
But would you say that that black market idea is a misnomer? What do you think?
I mean, honestly, I think after legalization, the black market is going to increase because it's going to be more of a supply and demand. You tax it by $42, you get it on the street for cheaper. We've seen in Colorado's, you know, even the states surrounding Colorado, how, you know, the influx of legal marijuana that's pouring out to states who haven't even legalized recreational marijuana.
Okay, let's put up a tweet. A lot of viewers have been weighing in on this, and they talk about, well, with all the tax revenue that's going to come in from this, you know, you could fund all sorts of different programs like education, et cetera, et cetera. But what do you think about that? Is it worth the extra money?
I mean, I would say this, Mike, that we've said that, you know, if we legalize lottery, if we legalize tobacco, if we legalize alcohol, that we will generate revenue to fix our roads and fix our schools. And we haven't seen that yet. I think that this is another idea and approach to have big corporations, Wall Street, weigh in on communities and make more money from it. So I don't think that this is an opportunity to really generate the money that is needed. I think that this is an opportunity to allow big business and big corporate greed to come into our communities.
You know, some statistics say that we may have over 30,000 people in jail or prisons in the state of New Jersey on these marijuana-related charges. What would happen to them if this thing passes later today? They all are set free?
Well, in our proposal, in the proposal going to be voted on today or at some point, there are steps of expungement. So a lot of people that have been jammed up on low-level marijuana charges are going to have both their records clear. And I'm not, my memory doesn't serve me at the moment to the specifics of who may be presently incarcerated, what their options of being released would be. But the first thing would be the cleaning of records for low-level marijuana offenses. And let me add as well, in the New Jersey approach to this, which unlike other states, we're doing legislatively as opposed by just a quick-cut ballot referendum. We are very clear that the little guy, the small business person, is going to have a chance at these licenses, because we don't want big corporations simply sweeping in and taking advantage of what's going to be a big economic market.
Boone, does that satisfy you?
I mean, I would say that even in the state of Colorado, you know, after legalization, we've seen an increase in incarceration amongst minorities and Hispanics. Hispanics by 38%, minority youth by 48%. And I think that, you know, if we're going to talk about real social justice, criminal justice reform, then we need to separate that from the legalization of a recreational new drug.
Thank you both. We'll see what happens later today.
And continuing with local news, a man walks into the ER of a hospital with cuts on his hands, and moments later, police arrest him for stabbing a man to death in West Philadelphia. It happened yesterday morning just before 10 on the 6200 block of Lansdowne Avenue. Police say the 28-year-old stabbed another man several times in the face. The 25-year-old victim was rushed to Penn Presbyterian Hospital, where he died a short time later. Officers arrested the suspect after he walked into the ER with cuts on his hands. Two men are in critical condition after shooting in the city's Kensington section. It happened just before 1 p.m. yesterday afternoon near Front and Clearfield Streets. The victims, a 30-year-old and 33-year-old man, were shot several times. So far, no arrests in this case. And yesterday at Love Park, young gun control advocates held a rally, gathering to remember the first anniversary of the March for Our Lives. The rally to remember featured a memorial honoring those killed by guns in Philadelphia and around the world. It also featured artwork and performances from students and activists.
We're still here. We're still fighting for change and for common sense gun legislation to be passed.
March for Our Lives organizers say they are planning an outreach campaign in schools and colleges for the next school year. And happening today, the viewing for firefighter Michael Bernstein will take place from 5 to 8 this evening. Bernstein died Wednesday after suffering a medical emergency while on duty. Friends and family will gather at John F. Givinish Funeral Home on Academy Road to begin saying their final farewells. There will be a funeral procession tomorrow morning starting at Engine 22. Bernstein served as a firefighter for 22 years. And people in West Oak Lane want answers this morning after their cars were hit in the middle of the night. A straight line of 8 smashed cars. It happened around midnight Sunday morning on 79th Avenue. Neighbors say this is the first time something like this has happened in their area. They say drivers treat the intersection like a racetrack.
This block, it happens so frequently that it's not really surprising. And you would think, oh my gosh, it just happened 3 weeks ago. It just happened about a month and a half ago. It's happened 3 times this year, and it's only March.
2 months ago, 8 cars on this side got hit. You know, and we're like, again, it happened?
People like me, I don't work. So I don't want to be paying the deductible to get my car fixed when my car is sitting in front of my door. I don't think that's good.
Police did not believe the driver was intoxicated, so they did not breathalyze him and let him go after the crash. His car was also heavily damaged and had to be towed from the scene. And in Delaware, a man has been arrested for DUI for the 6th time. Delaware State Police say 63-year-old John Trela of Lewes, Delaware, crashed into another driver while driving under the influence over the weekend. He's now at the Sussex Correctional Institution on a $10,000 cash bond. A nonprofit gives a teen girl in a wheelchair the freedom she needed but couldn't afford. Heather Littlejohn's hard-working family says they could not afford the wheelchair lift Heather needed, so they connected with Help Hope Live. The medical fundraising nonprofit helps families struggling through life-changing events. Events like the car crash that left Heather, who was a very active honor roll student, with a spinal cord injury.
I can't express like how grateful we are for this to happen to us, you know, because we just didn't expect it. Like everything that happened.
Thank you. Like, you changed my life like tremendously in such a good way.
After we aired Heather's story last year, many donations poured in, and local union members with the nonprofit A Lift for a Vet volunteered their skills to install the lift. And on Good Day Philadelphia this morning, we talked all things black vinegar. It's the next big health craze expected to replace your beloved apple cider vinegar. Why experts say you'll want to start cooking with black vinegar instead.
Because, you know, apple cider vinegar, it's become very popular in recent years. There are a lot of people who do it every day.
Yes.
And we've done segments on it.
Yeah.
So people stock their pantries with it after hearing about all the health benefits. Well, it's time to move over apple cider vinegar because there's a new superfood in town. And it's black vinegar.
Now, Emily is back with us, registered dietitian nutritionist over at Thomas Jefferson University Hospital. She made these little super V, like Superman. It's a superfood. Does it live up to these symbols? Let's find out. First of all, what is vinegar?
Vinegar is a distilled or fermented product, usually made from some kind of grain, either rice, wheat, a distilled alcohol product.
But the black vinegar here is made from rice, black or white rice?
It's very interesting. So it actually, the Chinese vinegar, which this product is actually made from unpolished rice, which is this white rice. It ferments from 1 to 3 years to get this black product.
So you're speaking of the black rice and white rice in the bowls in front of that black vinegar bottle.
But right. Either one.
You can use either one. So Japanese tends to use the black rice, which makes that also black.
So either way, it's going to be black.
Right. It's just interesting at that 1 to 3 year mark. The longer it ferments, the darker the color gets and the more potent it gets.
Well, the blacker the vinegar, well, anyway. So I've had apple cider just raw.
And that's already very sour and it's an interesting taste.
I wouldn't drink too much of that because it would hurt your
Right.
throat.
It actually can affect your esophagus. It can take the enamel off your beautiful teeth. So you really do not want to, how it's recommended is to take a shot and then chase it with water. That's how it's recommended, which I don't recommend, but you guys can get an idea.
I'm just going to take a sip of it. Just, oh, it's strong.
It's like a balsamic, stronger balsamic.
It tastes like balsamic vinegar.
But a very sour balsamic.
I don't mind it. So what would you put it on? Salads like
Exactly.
normal?
Mix it with salads. I mean, you can mix it with some oil and put it on salad.
So you put the oil on there and then
drizzle it. So it's much better as a sauce. So the benefits, so they're claiming, is it's supposed to make you feel a little bit more full, so you can lose some weight. It also may lower cholesterol, lower blood sugar.
And why is this one now preferred over apple cider vinegar?
Because it's been fermented longer, so the nutritional benefits are actually higher. There's more potassium, there's more iron, there's more antioxidants.
Okay, let's put it in a smoothie to see if we can still taste it, because we really don't want to taste it.
Right.
But we want the benefits.
Exactly, because again, tasting it would cause, do you guys want to pour it in?
Yeah.
These are blueberries here. So we had some blueberries, we had
vinegar.
some strawberries. This is sort of a super shake because it has
strawberries first?
All right, strawberries.
It has antioxidants in it.
I've never seen blueberries that small.
Yes, I guess when they're dehydrated. This is a mix of some orange juice and lemon juice.
Okay, the whole thing?
The whole thing. And then this is our black vinegar here.
And how much did you put in?
This is about half a cup or so.
Half a cup.
Oh, about a quarter of a cup, actually.
And that's what you need every day?
Well, the recommendation is 1 to 3 tablespoons.
Oh, okay.
No, wrong way. 1 to 3 tablespoons 3 times. I'm sorry, 1 tablespoon 3 times a day.
It never spins on easily.
There we
it
go.
goes.
You already got it. Now, the problem.
The problem is we don't have ice.
But no, it should be cool, but you have it right there. If you consume too much of this product, because people tend to take these types of trendy foods overboard, you can develop reflux, you can develop, again, erosion of the teeth. You can also develop some stomach cramps, bloating. So you have to be careful with overdoing many of these
What the
products.
heck's the benefit then if I'm going to be cramping and bloated? And
The point is it's that 1 to 3 tablespoons per day, not 6 tablespoons.
And can you do them all at once if you just want to knock it out, or you
No,
just
you
space it out?
you want to space it out.
No, that tastes good. That's fine. You got
I think the
berries.
blueberries and the orange juice and lemon juice
Still
definitely
a little kick, but it's good.
It's a little bit of it.
It's
yeah.
drinkable. All right.
All right.
Black vinegar.
Seems how I'm bloated and cramping anyway every day.
Where can you get it?
So that was a big challenge. It's actually at Asian food markets, and it's on Amazon.
Okay.
So that's it's
We
a little
can
bit harder
find
to find.
We'll find
We'll
it.
find it.
And if you or someone you know is looking for a job in the city, head to the Pennsylvania Convention Center. The Four Seasons Hotel needs to hire 500 workers, so they've organized a 2-day job fair. Fox 29's Sabina Kuriakos was live this morning with the information you need.
They have 500 jobs available, and take a look. We already have the early birds who are here dressed so nicely with their resumes in hand. A lot of good people here hoping to get those jobs, and we actually have the general manager of the Four Seasons here, Ben Shank, local guy from Lower Merion.
Yeah, it's great to be back here and really excited about what we have in store today.
Back home for the big opening later this summer.
Long time coming.
So really quick, before we talk to some of those folks who are waiting in line, we want to show your team getting ready right now for the big interviewing process. They're getting hyped up, ready to go, ready to hire some awesome candidates for these jobs. Thanks, guys. We'll let you get back to it, and we're going to go over here. So, Ben, tell us quick about, you have a job fair today and tomorrow. Again, we mentioned hundreds of jobs. Who are you looking for? Who are you hiring?
So today it's all food and beverage, so we're looking for restaurant servers, banquet staff, culinary, so all of their cooks, stewarding, and then tomorrow it's our rooms division, so housekeeping, front office, spa, things of that nature. We're starting at 9 o'clock. It's great to see that we already have a turnout this early, and we're really looking for hungry, passionate individuals who want more than just a job. They're actually looking for a long career.
And I can tell, well, you made a 20-year long career with the Four Seasons, so you know what you're talking about. And we also met these gentlemen here who definitely, I think already from talking to you guys, meet that description. Good morning. So, Michael, you actually worked at the old Four Seasons.
Yes, I was here. The last Four Seasons closed on June the 6th of 2015. I was one of the final ones coming out the door.
And what brought you back?
I came back for a rehire because I've been in the new Four Seasons. It's a great place.
Well, good luck to you, sir.
Thank
We
you.
wish you all the best of luck. Thank you so much. And hi, Mark. Good morning.
Good morning.
And you came here with resume in hand. I like that tie you got on. Tell me what brought you here. You said a family member told you about this job. It might be perfect for you.
Yes, my great aunt told me about this job fair, and when I heard it was the Four Seasons, I just had to come out.
How excited are you about this? Yeah.
I'm very excited. I'm just willing to go in there and give it my best shot.
Awesome. Well, good luck to you again. And hi again, Sir Marvin, right?
Yes, it is.
Nice to meet you, and good luck to you. You said you also are in the hospitality business.
Absolutely. All right. I do love it.
And back for more.
I'm back for more.
All right. Well, all of you gentlemen, so nice. Thank you for talking to us, because I know it's hard looking for a job. You must be so nervous, but you are calm and cool under pressure talking to us on live TV, guys. Back to you.
Preliminary 2019 Policy Conference Together, AIPAC President Mort Friedman and my good friend Howard Kaur. To members of Congress, Israeli ministers, members of the Knesset, to the 18,000 friends of Israel who have come from near and far, it is great to be back at AIPAC, the largest gathering of pro-Israel Americans in the United States. And speaking of pro-Israel Americans, allow me to bring greetings from a friend of mine, and someone history has already proven to be the greatest friend of the Jewish people and the state of Israel ever to sit in the Oval Office of the White House. I bring greetings from the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump. We gather here today as Americans to speak about the progress that we've made and the strength of our alliance with our most cherished ally. But I just have to say, yesterday was a great day for our country, our president, and every American who cherishes the truth. After 2 years of investigation and reckless accusations by many Democrats and members of the media, the special counsel confirmed what President Trump said all along. There was no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia during the 2016 election, and the Attorney General confirmed there was no obstruction of justice. Make no mistake about it, my fellow Americans, this was a total vindication of the President of the United States and our campaign. And it should be welcomed by every American. And even if some Democrats want to spend more time on discredited allegations, the American people can be confident. The President and I are going to continue to focus where we always have, on the issues that are most important to our country, on a stronger and more prosperous America, and on a safer world. And that's exactly what we've done since the first day of this administration. I mean, think about it. President Trump promised to rebuild our military, and he signed into law the largest investment in our national defense since the days of Ronald Reagan. With that renewed American strength, he promised to take the fight to radical Islamic terrorism on our terms on their soil. And as the Department of Defense confirmed Friday, thanks to the courage of our armed forces and our partners in the region, the last inch of ground controlled by the Islamic State in Syria has been captured. Five years after ISIS controlled nearly 35,000 square miles in Syria and Iraq, and nearly 5 million people lived under their brutal regime, the ISIS caliphate is no more. President Trump also promised to revive the American economy, to cut taxes, to roll back regulation, and unleash American energy. And he did it. Since Election Day, we've created 5.3 million new jobs. The unemployment rate has hit a 50-year low, and more Americans are working today than ever before in the history of the United States. No matter how you measure it, record job growth, record investment, record employment, the American economy is once again the envy of the world. President Donald Trump is a man of his word. And with respect to our most cherished ally, he's been more than a man of his word. Under President Donald Trump, if the world knows nothing else, the world knows this: America stands with Israel. You know, it's the greatest honor of my life to serve as Vice President alongside a president who cares so deeply about the state of Israel. Thanks to the President's leadership, our alliance has never been stronger. Our friendship has never been deeper. We stand with Israel today for the same reasons the American people have always stood with Israel. We stand with Israel because her cause is our cause. Her values are our values. And her fight is our fight. We stand with Israel because we believe in right over wrong, in good over evil, in liberty over tyranny. We stand with Israel today, tomorrow, and we always will. But it's not just been talk. President Trump promised that Israel will have the resources and tools to defend itself by itself. And today, in the wake of the rocket attack near Tel Aviv, I'm proud to report that American support for the security of the state of Israel has never been stronger. And the military of the state of Israel is stronger than ever before. President Trump also promised to shut down the PLO office in Washington if the Palestinian Authority refused to take immediate steps to stop funding terrorists who murder innocent Israeli civilians with American tax dollars. And when the PLO refused, President Trump shut their office down. And today, thanks to so many of you, the Taylor Force Act is the law of the land. And when President Trump promised to cut off funding to anti-Israel agencies at the United Nations, he meant it. And last year, the United States ended all U.S. contributions to UNRWA. Beyond all that, the President promised to stand up to the world's leading state sponsor of terror. And he withdrew the United States of America from the disastrous nuclear deal with Iran. There'll be no more pallets of cash to the mullahs in Iran. And last year, President Trump did what no American president before him had the courage to do. When he moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel. And as though all this wasn't enough, as Prime Minister Netanyahu said just last week, he did it again. You know, for 20 years after Israel's rebirth, Syria held the Golan Heights. And with its massive artillery, it held Israel hostage. This crucial region changed hands only after Israel won a war that was forced upon her. Years later, when Israel's enemies attacked her on the holiest day of the Jewish year, thousands of patriots stepped up to defend their homeland, including a young tank commander who single-handedly kept a fleet of enemy tanks at bay, the great Zvika Greengold. It's an amazing story. Late one night, all alone on the Tap Line route, as enemy tanks rolled into Israel, a miracle happened. Captain Greengold moved his lone tank back and forth in the darkness, firing in different directions to confound and delay a far larger enemy force. His actions not only helped turn the tide of the battle in Israel's favor, they secured the Golan Heights from enemy control and with it saved the state of Israel from the brink of disaster. But for generations, leaders have recognized the Golan Heights are critical to the strategic security of the state of Israel. But President Trump took action. And today, for the first time in 52 years, with Prime Minister Netanyahu at his side, the President of the United States will formally recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Our president made these decisions in the best interest of the United States, but he also believed they were in the best interest of peace. Because a lasting peace can only be built on a foundation of truth. So we will work for peace, and we will pray for the peace of Jerusalem, that those who love her will be secure. Peace cannot be imposed. To be lasting and to be real, peace must be negotiated. But peace can only be negotiated with partners who are committed to peace. And today's rocket attack by Hamas proves that Hamas is not a partner for peace. Hamas is a terrorist organization that seeks the destruction of Israel, and the United States will never negotiate with terrorist Hamas. Now, while any peace will undoubtedly require compromise, you can be confident of this. The United States of America will never compromise the safety and security of the state of Israel. In February, it was my great honor, along with my wife Karen, to travel to Poland on the President's behalf. We represented the United States at an unprecedented gathering of leaders from more than 60 nations. Leaders who sat down and openly discussed their joint commitment to peace and security in the Middle East. It was a remarkable gathering. And it was amazing to see leaders from across the region agree that the greatest threat to peace and security in the Middle East is the Islamic Republic of Iran. You know, the president's critics predicted disaster when he withdrew from the Iran deal. But the so-called Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action didn't prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. It merely delayed the day when that vile regime would gain access to the world's deadliest weapons. Since then, the United States has implemented a maximum pressure campaign to change Iran's malign behavior and hold the regime accountable for its destructive actions. And the campaign is working. The Iranian people are protesting against the regime. The Iranian economy is reeling under unprecedented U.S. sanctions, and now Iran must choose between caring for its people and continuing to fund its proxies who destabilize the region and threaten Israel. The Iranian regime openly advocates another Holocaust and seeks the means to achieve it. But I can assure you, under President Donald Trump's leadership, America will continue to stand strong. We will continue to oppose Iran's malign influence, and under this president, America will never allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. You know, when authoritarian regimes breathe out vile anti-Semitic hatred and threats of violence, history teaches that we must take them at their word. Last month, Karen and I stood and prayed at the Auschwitz-Birkenau Nazi death camp in Poland. It was a deeply moving experience. As we walked about those deserted grounds, as I looked at the gas chambers, piles of suitcases, the piles of little shoes, it reinforced my resolve that our answer to this unspeakable tragedy for this and every generation must be never again. Never again. Never again. Now, my friends, we've reached a fateful moment in our history. All over the world, anti-Semitism is on the rise. On college campuses, in the marketplace, even in the halls of Congress. You know, there was a time when support for Israel was not a partisan issue here in Washington. I'll never forget the day in 2007 that I, a conservative Christian Republican, was asked to co-found the Congressional Anti-Semitism Task Force by the only Holocaust survivor ever to serve in Congress, the Democrat chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the late and great Tom Lantos. Support for Israel, as was reflected in that moment when Chairman Lantos came by my office, has been a long and bipartisan tradition in the Congress, spanning generations. But how things have changed. It's astonishing to think that the party of Harry Truman, which did so much to help create the state of Israel, has been co-opted by people who promote rank anti-Semitic rhetoric and work to undermine the broad American consensus of support for Israel. Recently, a freshman Democrat in Congress trafficked in repeated anti-Semitic tropes, alleged congressional support for Israel reflected an allegiance to a foreign country, said that Israel had, and I quote, hypnotized the world. And she accused Americans who support Israel of being bought off by campaign contributions. Anti-Semitism has no place in the Congress of the United States of America. And at a minimum, anyone who slanders those who support this historic alliance between the United States and Israel should never have a seat on the Foreign Affairs Committee of the United States House of Representatives. The party that's been the home of so many American Jews for so long today struggled to muster the votes to unequivocally condemn anti-Semitism in a resolution. You know, as governor of Indiana, I was proud to sign the toughest anti-BDS legislation of any state in the Union. But remarkably, today, all but one Democrat running for president voted against the Combating BDS Act in the United States Senate. And as I stand before you, 8 Democrat candidates for president are actually boycotting this very conference. So let me be clear on this point. Anyone who aspires to the highest office in the land should not be afraid to stand with the strongest supporters of Israel in America. It is wrong to boycott Israel, and it is wrong to boycott AIPAC. President Trump and I couldn't be more proud to stand with all of you today, tomorrow, and always to strengthen the ties that bind America and Israel. We here in the United States admire Israel and her success. In fact, we marvel at it. The Jewish people have turned the desert into a garden, scarcity into plenty, sickness into health. They've turned hope into a future of security and prosperity. A tiny land, a land with no natural resources, no rushing rivers or verdant valleys. A nation that, despite not knowing a single day of true peace, has in 2 short generations become one of the world's most vibrant and successful nations. Israel is an inspiration to the world. The United States is proud to stand with Israel and her people as allies and cherished friends. Providence entrusted the United States to be the guardian of liberty, and that's a trust we will never forsake. That they shall sit, every man and woman, under his vine and under his fig tree, and that none shall make them afraid, shall be our anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, Israel and the United States will always stand together because America and Israel are more than friends. We're more than partners or allies. My friends, the United States and Israel are family. We're mishpucha. We are a family, descended from a common tradition, faith. We're a family that upholds common values, and together we share a common destiny. The American-Israeli alliance is stronger than ever. Our friendship is greater than ever, and together our future can only be brighter. And as President Trump has pledged, our administration will always stand with our cherished friend and partner, the State of Israel. And so thank you. Thank you for the honor of addressing you today and for your support. It is the greatest honor of my life to serve as your vice president at such a time as this. And I thank you. But permit me to close with a blessing. To all my fellow Americans who love this country, and to all those gathered here who cherish Israel and the people of Israel. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his countenance shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may all your ways be paths of peace. With the unwavering support of all of you and all of those who call these 2 great nations home, with the leadership of President Donald Trump, and with God's help, I know the best days for Israel and the United States of America are yet to come. Thank you. God bless you. God bless Israel, and God bless the United States of America.
Please welcome author and journalist Ebony Williams.
Our next guest hardly needs an introduction. During her 2 years as the American ambassador to the United States of America at the United Nations, Nikki Haley proved herself, yes, Nikki Haley proved herself a true friend of Israel and a champion of the American-Israeli relationship. She worked tirelessly to ensure that the anti-Israel bias that persists at the UN was put on its heels. And she showed and demonstrated that tenacity time and time again. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to this stage the former United States of America Ambassador to the United Nations, Miss Nikki Haley.
Fantastic. Oh, so great. Thank you. Wow. You guys are so amazing. Thank you. Thank you. If I'm ever having a bad day, I just need to come here.
We'll just recreate it for you.
It's amazing every single time.
It's amazing.
I love you too. Thank you.
Clear to say the ambassador has some fans here. That's wonderful. Well earned. Ambassador, I want to start with the devastating breaking news, though, from this morning. Last night, Hamas launched rockets from Gaza that smashed into a home right outside of Tel Aviv, injuring a family of 7, including a toddler and an infant. Now, it seems that if a terrorist group had launched a rocket some 75 miles outside of any major city from any country in this world, the expectation would be an outpour of sympathy. It seems as if except that city is Israel, or country is Israel, rather. My question to you is this. You are uniquely positioned inside of the UN. Please help us understand what those conversations are like after a tragic attack like this. What is said, how is it contemplated, and how in this exact type of instance you were able to time and time again make sure that it was clear that the U.S. stood with Israel in this type of event?
You know, what's interesting is that the UN, I can guarantee you this morning, it is radio silent. They are not saying anything about Hamas. They're not saying anything about the lives lost. They're not saying anything. But if it was any one of those countries, they'd be calling an emergency Security Council meeting. But this is where I want you to have hope. Because in all these years, last year for the first time, the majority of the general membership of the UN voted for a resolution that acknowledged Hamas and acknowledged the terror that they were spreading and acknowledged how bad they were. That was an amazing thing. And what we have to make sure they know is Hamas is a terrorist group that needs to be stopped, and we can't ever be quiet about it.
Quick follow-up on that, Ambassador. Why does it seem that the UN historically has focused on the Israeli response to an attack like this versus the attack itself?
I mean, it's just, what I've learned is at the UN, it's just been this way for so long that they do that. But the story behind one of my meetings was I was meeting with a couple of Arab countries, and we were talking about Yemen. And one of them said, I just don't understand, why isn't anyone calling out Hezbollah? Why aren't they sitting there saying something about what's being done? All of these things that are happening, because they were upset that that terrorist group was doing something they shouldn't be doing. And I turned around and I said, well, if you're upset about that, what's the difference between that and Hamas and Israel? They were stunned, but when our meeting was over, they pulled me to the side and they said, you're right. We know you're right, but we have to do this for our constituents. That's what they're doing this for. It's for sound bites for their constituents. They don't honestly think that way. It's just they've done it for so long, they do what they think they've always had to do.
It's fascinating. Looking back at your tenure, though, at the UN, and you had so many of them, but please share what you feel were some of your brightest accomplishments, particularly those of concern to AIPAC here today.
Still being alive today. Surviving the UN was surviving, and I still have my heels on, by the way.
Absolutely. Fabulous.
I think that, and I hope everybody in this audience is really proud of what we accomplished at the UN. Because if we just go down the list, we got out of UNESCO, we got out of the Iran deal and pointed the finger where it needed to be pointed, which was on Iran. We got out of the Human Rights Council, which for once now other countries are actually holding the burden and realizing they need to do something about the anti-Israel bias. We got them to acknowledge Hamas for the first time. And by the way, we moved the embassy to Jerusalem. We got the Israeli bashing session that happened every month to not sit there and just bash Israel. We actually started a conversation about what really are the issues in the Middle East, like what was happening in Yemen, like what was happening with terrorists, like what we were trying to do in all of these other countries that mattered, as opposed to it being about Israel. And I think everyone in this audience should be so proud, because you pushed and you hoped and we won by doing all of those things.
Now, you just mentioned it there, the focus, the extreme focus, I'll call it, on Israel and the UN. Now, I know when you were first named ambassador, you were a bit taken aback, right, by just how incredibly narrow that focus was on Israel within the UN. Were there any particular moments of kind of strict scrutiny around Israel that stood out to you?
It was, you guys have heard me say this before. It was like everybody was bullying this kid in the corner. And it was abusive, and it was wrong, and it was just unwarranted. That was the biggest thing, is it was unwarranted. Here was, such a strong democracy sitting in a neighborhood that's so dangerous. And in any other situation, you'd be lifting that country up and having their back. And instead, they were kicking them. And so, really when you see something like that, whether it's Israel or anything else, you have to stand up and fight. You have to stand up and fight for those that don't think they can stand up for themselves. You look at Israel now, Israel's alive and kicking, and they're going to continue to do that.
Ambassador, what do you think the motivation is? Why is there such reluctancy to have some sense of fairness and balance when it comes to Israel and the UN?
I think this goes back to after the 1967 war. I think that everyone suddenly realized that Israel couldn't be defeated. And what that meant was they had to go after them diplomatically. And so all of the Arab countries led the charge on going after them diplomatically. And because of their influence, because of the oil, because of so many other reasons, other countries felt the need to follow them. And that is why towards the end, we absolutely called out the Arab countries on what they were doing. And we need to keep doing that. Because at the end of the day, I don't know that they believe this anymore. I think they've done it because they always have. But even you could see the embarrassment. You could see the fact none of the countries wanted to be called out. You could see the fact that they were actually looking in the mirror. And I think we just can't let up on that.
Well taken. I want to talk about Iran, because it's crystal clear to everybody in this room that they have been ratcheting up the aggression every day. What do you think that America, that our allies in Europe and beyond really need to be doing, Ambassador, to respond to this hyper-aggression from Iran?
I think we have to isolate Iran like we isolated North Korea. Because they're one and the same. They're doing the same thing. They're suppressing their people. They're building up their military weapons. I mean, we have to separate them and make them feel isolated. And I think we did that by getting out of the Iran deal. I think the Europeans are starting to realize that that's not going to be sustainable, and they're going to have to come up with another option. I think we need to stop with the waivers. If you are doing business with Iran, you want to talk about BDS? If you are doing business with Iran, that's who we should be talking about in terms of a country that we don't want to have any companies do business with.
Finally, I want to know what you're up to right now. I know you started an amazing organization called Stand for America. Tell us a bit about it.
Well, first, I want to thank you for having me even after the fact that I'm not ambassador anymore. I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, one, thank you for having me back at your party. I love being here. The second thing is I'm learning how to Uber, and it's been interesting. My kids are so embarrassed because when I finally get to my destination, I'm just sitting there, and the driver's like, "Do you need anything?" And I'm like, "No, I'm waiting for someone to open the door." How embarrassing is that? It is hilarious. So embarrassing. So I'm learning how to kind of do other things, but I'm doing some speaking. I'm doing some writing. A book is coming, so that will definitely be something I'm looking forward to. And I launched a platform, and I would so love if every single one of you would go on to www.standforamericanow.com and join, because I'm too young to stop fighting. I'm just not going to stop fighting. It's in my blood. This allows me to continue fighting for all the things I care about. It allows me to continue having a voice on the things that I think matter. And I'm not going anywhere. Just because I left the UN, my husband will tell you, I'm still loud and proud and will continue to fight every single day. But I do want to end on one note, because after coming out of the UN, there's something that I think is very important to everybody. The way the political atmosphere is right now, It's so toxic. It's so toxic. And you know how you know it's toxic? Is because if you put a good piece of legislation on the table, everybody wants to know whose it is first before they decide whether to support it. That's wrong. Political parties now see each other as evil.
Yeah.
And they're not evil, because I've seen evil. I've seen in Democratic Republic of Congo where the military comes in, and I've heard women who've said they've taken their babies and thrown them in fires. I've been to South Sudan where they use rape as a weapon of war. I've watched as Assad has killed innocent children with chemical weapons. I stood on the bridge outside of Venezuela where the average adult has lost 24 pounds trying to cross over that bridge in the hot sun just to get the one meal they're going to have that day. That's evil. What we have are issues. But those aren't evil. They're just our opponents. It's just policy. And on our worst day, America has so much to be blessed for. Every one of us should feel blessed every single day. So, stop the finger pointing and stop the fighting, and let's get some things done. But remind everyone that we are blessed, be grateful about it, and never stop using the power of your voice, because it matters. It really does matter.
I'm going to say amen to that.
Thank you.
And from one Carolina woman to another one, I want to say thank you on behalf of everybody in this room for your commitment to the United States of America and Israel's relationship, and for your overall leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Nikki Haley.
Great to see.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our morning program. For your safety and the safety of those around you, please follow the guidance of the event staff to your designated exit. Thank you for your patience as we try to clear the room as quickly as possible.
he's gonna be coming in from that door, but he's gonna be like, yeah. Yeah, I just need to make sure he has room.
Chris. Is that good for you? Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Steve. Everybody ready? All right. Good afternoon. I'm Josh Shapiro, honored to serve as Pennsylvania's Attorney General. And I'm pleased to be joined today by a number of law enforcement colleagues from around the country. Let me acknowledge and welcome Jennifer Williams, the first Assistant United States Attorney in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, Christian Zajac, the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Philadelphia Field Office of the FBI, Stan Rutkowski, the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Office of Investigations from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and Justin Chapman, the Assistant State's Attorney for Palm Beach County, and we're grateful that he made the trip to be here today. I want to acknowledge and thank a number of partner agencies who helped us get to this day: the Pennsylvania Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, and the U.S. Department of Labor. And of course, I'm always pleased to be joined by senior members of our team: Michelle Henry, our first Deputy Attorney General; Rob Labar, our Senior Deputy Attorney General; Christy Christ, Deputy Attorney General here in the Office of the Attorney General; Eric Norman and Doug Hilliard, investigators here in our office. I am very pleased to be joined by these leaders of law enforcement from throughout the country to announce the results of a state grand jury investigation into a highly sophisticated insurance fraud scam that profited off of people seeking help for substance use disorder. The owners and operators of Liberation Way, a drug and alcohol treatment center based in Yardley, Bucks County, generated tens of millions of dollars in profits for themselves by illegally running sober living homes and defrauding insurance companies in the region. I'd like to detail our investigation, the inner workings of the scheme, the charges that we filed today, and how these people took the opioid crisis that is ravaging Pennsylvania and exploited it for their own profit. This is an incredibly complex and difficult case, more than 2 years in the making. And I want to commend the leaders that you see here for their work in putting this together, and my partners for their assistance in the effort. At the conclusion of my remarks and the announcement of state charges, the United States Attorney's Office will also announce federal charges. So let me detail our investigation. In September 2017, after receiving a referral from the PA Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, the 41st statewide investigative grand jury began conducting an investigation into allegations that Liberation Way and its co-founders, Jason Gerner and Dallas Fetterman, were running an insurance fraud scam. DDAP, the state agency that provides oversight and regulation for all drug and alcohol treatment programs in Pennsylvania, had received several complaints about Liberation Way from former employees and families of patients. I want to commend DDAP and the Wolf administration for their strong cooperation throughout this entire investigation. Liberation Way operated in locations in Yardley, Bucks County, and in Ballackinwood and in Fort Washington in Montgomery County, and had licensed and been approved by DDAP to provide outpatient, that's critical, outpatient treatment services in July of 2015. Liberation Way did provide some real treatment and services, but that treatment was often subpar and not the caliber that patients deserved. The grand jury's investigation uncovered a wealth of criminal activity perpetuated by the owners and operators of Liberation Way. Let me outline how 3 major schemes worked and how they were employed to profit off of their patients. First, Scheme 1 involving insurance fraud. Liberation Way, together with its holding company, Liberation Behavioral Health, and its founding members, various employees and investors, illegally secured and paid the insurance premiums for its patients' policies so they could bill the insurance companies for treatment that was substandard, medically unnecessary, and sometimes even non-existent. These patient policies were secured using fraudulent information to make sure the patients qualified for high-end or platinum coverage so that Liberation Way would be reimbursed at the highest amount. From the outset, Liberation Way specifically targeted out-of-network insurance carriers so that Liberation Way could bill any amount it chose without the hindrance of contractual agreements, pre-negotiated rates, or reimbursement schedules. One insurance company they took advantage of was Independence Blue Cross, right here in the Philadelphia area, and a member of the Blue Cross Blue Shield network. The grand jury heard testimony that between July 2015 and early 2018, Liberation Way actually billed Blue Cross Blue Shield companies in excess of $115 million. Some of these billings were for policies that Liberation had schemed to secure just days before, or even the same day that the patient began their so-called treatment. Because it is improper for a treatment provider like Liberation Way to pay the insurance policy premiums on behalf of patients, employees attempted to then hide the source of the funds used to pay the premiums. They would pay the premiums, get this, using cash, using prepaid Visa gift cards, and the bank accounts of two nonprofit organizations established by or at the direction of the owners of Liberation Way called Hope for Families and Leaf Healthcare Financial, or just simply Leaf. Leaf was specifically set up to appear to have no connection to Liberation in order to pay for these platinum policies, of which the patients themselves, importantly, were never informed. They were never informed of this scheme. All the patients ever knew was that they were being offered treatment free of charge. In actuality, their identities and personal information were being used to generate millions of dollars in illegal profits for the owners of Liberation Way. Because by using this false information, like fake addresses, and paying the premiums themselves, Liberation could ensure that they got the highest possible reimbursement in order to turn a profit. One former patient actually testified that following his treatment, he became an employee at Liberation. And as an employee, he was pressured to allow other patients to use his home address on North 34th Street in Philadelphia to fraudulently obtain insurance coverage. Another patient who became an employee after his treatment testified that Liberation Way's Yardley business address was used as his home address to secure an insurance policy for him, and that employees instructed him to say his family was making insurance payments on his behalf if he was ever questioned about the scheme. And this was just part one of the fraud. Part two involved Florida lab billings, and we thank our law enforcement colleague from Florida for being here today. The investigation revealed that these two founding members, Gerner and Dallas Fetterman, developed an elaborate kickback scheme involving thousands of medically unnecessary urine tests, which were sent to a Florida lab for analysis. Some former patients testified that they were required to provide multiple urine samples each week, and some had to submit as many as 3 or 4 samples each and every day. So you understand, the standard amount of samples for someone in treatment per the federal guidelines is 8 times yearly, or once every 6 weeks, and instead they were doing it multiple times daily. A full panel of tests were ordered and performed on every specimen collected at Liberation Way, a full panel being the most expensive and thus the most lucrative. Staff were then incentivized with $100 to $500 bonuses per month for requesting a certain number of urine samples from patients. There was limited interaction between the physicians and patients in the ordering or in the interpretation of these urine samples. A review of medical files showed that the lab results were often not even entered into the patient's medical files and were not discussed with them in relation to future treatment. Those Florida labs then billed insurance companies at exorbitant rates. And once the labs then received the payments from the insurance companies, get this, a portion of the fee was sent back to Dallas Fetterman and Gerner. When the unnecessary lab fees were not paid in full by the insurance companies, Liberation Way and lab representatives actually harassed and threatened patients and their families, demanding that they be the ones to pay the outstanding balances. This just added to Dallas Fetterman and Jason Gerner's profit. As a result of this kickback scheme alone, Independence Blue Cross was billed in excess of $33 million and paid out more than $4 million for this unnecessary lab work. Here's how Scheme 3 worked involving sober homes. Liberation Way ran a cycle of treatment that really actually did the exact opposite. Instead, it aimed to extend the time that people suffered from addiction in order to maximize profits. Liberation Way illegally directed patients to live in company-owned, unlicensed, sober homes to increase the treatment time for which the insurers could be billed. Because Liberation Way was working hand in hand with housing providers, and in some cases actually had direct ownership of these properties, it was in essence operating as an inpatient facility. And remember, it was not licensed to be an inpatient facility by DDEP. Liberation Way operated daily shuttles from the so-called sober homes to treatment locations, and patients were actually required to stick to the driver's schedule, not their own. They were not free to come and go as they pleased, as is typical for outpatient treatment. They could not choose where they wanted to live, yet another example of how Liberation Way controlled the people it claimed it was actually caring for. One location on Stump Road in North Wales in Montgomery County was actually known as the Party House by patients. Patients found themselves in unsavory or even unsafe conditions where the temptation to relapse was rampant, and that was actually by design. Some of the housing was co-ed, which is very uncommon in the treatment industry, and in fact, it was discovered that employees were engaged in sexual relationships with patients who were actively supposed to be receiving treatment. Any patient who then relapsed would re-enter treatment at a higher and more intensive level of care, which resulted in Liberation Way's billing at even a higher rate of reimbursement. So they put them in these facilities where they were destined to fail, and then they profited even more off of that failure. Liberation cycled patients through the treatment process as many times as they possibly could, in some cases as many as 8 times. They used these people for all they were worth, and that worth was defined by insurance benefits, and then dumped them even if they were still struggling with addiction. All told, between July 2015 and January 2018, Liberation Way and its co-founders, Jason Gerner and Dallas Fetterman, profited more than $44 million from these schemes. $44 million. They lived a lavish life, profiting off of the addiction of others. The $44 million includes payments from insurance companies, plus those illegal kickbacks. You should know that Independence Blue Cross, in total, was overbilled by approximately $17 million. And I want to thank Independence Blue Cross for their extensive cooperation and assistance throughout this investigation. In December 2017, Liberation Way was sold to a private equity firm for more than $40 million. And the proceeds of that sale were divided amongst the owners and investors, including Gerner, and the estate of Dallas Fetterman, who himself passed away from an overdose in May 2017. Given the facts uncovered in their investigation, the grand jury has recommended criminal charges, including corrupt organization, dealing in proceeds of unlawful activities, criminal conspiracy, insurance fraud, and identity theft. Understand these are significant charges. Potentially facing incarceration are these individuals who defrauded these poor people. Arrest warrants were issued this morning for 11 people and 9 corporations. The details were provided to you in a handout. All of the defendants surrendered to district court in Morrisville, Bucks County this morning before 9 a.m. and are currently in various stages of being processed. $14.6 million from the investment accounts of Gerner and Coluccio have been seized, and we anticipate seizing more, as this is, importantly, an active and ongoing investigation. We plan to use those funds, the $14.6 million from that seizure, and any additional seizures that may come in the future, to pay restitution to those who were defrauded. In closing, let me just say this. I cannot overstate how complex and appalling this case is in light of the opioid epidemic that is ravaging us here in Pennsylvania, in Florida, and across the United States. Opioid overdoses, you know, you've heard me say many times, is the #1 accidental killer in Pennsylvania. We lose 15 Pennsylvanians every single day. 1,200 people died in Philadelphia just last year. There were 5,456 fatal overdoses back in 2017. Importantly, the year that Liberation Way was at the height of operating its scheme. But the people who operated Liberation, man, they had little concern for the well-being of the patients that they purported to help. They harassed and threatened these patients and their families for more money. They lured them into unnecessary treatment, all because their primary motivation was greed. It was greed, and it was illegal profit. It was never to help these individuals who were in need of health care and recovery. The opioid epidemic, you've heard me say many times, is our top priority in this office. It is the #1 public safety threat in Pennsylvania, and indeed the #1 public health crisis throughout the Commonwealth. I want to thank our partners in the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, and the other agencies in Pennsylvania at the federal level and in Florida. Specifically, the Palm Beach County Sober Home Task Force in Palm Beach County, Florida. They assisted us in meaningful ways in this investigation. This is law enforcement at its best, collaborating, working together, breaking down the silos and stovepipes that often prevent cooperation, but instead coming together to get the job done. And I'm grateful to our partners. And with that, it's now my honor to have Jennifer Williams, the first Assistant United States Attorney here in our office, to speak on behalf of United States Attorney Bill McSwain and the good work that her office did. This is one of many examples of our collaboration with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we appreciate Jennifer being here today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Attorney General Shapiro, and thank you all. In 2015, as overdose deaths were doubling all across the Commonwealth, businesses looking to serve those struggling with addiction were also popping up at unprecedented rates. Some had honorable intentions, but some did not, and it was in that environment that Liberation Way opened its doors. Federal charges are being announced today that allege that the founders of Liberation Way did not design its business to battle the nation's opioid crisis. Rather, these charges allege that the Liberation Way founders saw the crisis as an opportunity to exploit the vulnerable and desperate and to profit through fraud and deceit. The alleged Liberation Way business model was quite simple. Though the investigation is complex, the business model is quite simple. 1, Liberation Way targeted and recruited patients with premium health care plans. 2, Liberation Way paid off a doctor to order millions of dollars in drug screening urine tests for those patients, even though he never treated, saw, or provided care to any of those Liberation Way patients. 3, the charges allege that the drug tests ordered by Liberation Way were repetitive and frequent and not in any way supported by medical need or logic. Rather, the test orders were submitted fast and furious over and over again. 4, these charges allege that laboratories in Florida played their part in the conspiracy by performing these unwarranted high-volume drug tests, causing millions of dollars in fraudulent claims to be submitted to those premium healthcare programs. And 5, the laboratories then kicked back to Liberation Way approximately 40% of the money they received from insurance, designed and disguised as commission and consulting payments. As a result of this scheme, it is charged federally that the Liberation Way founders and their co-conspirators made money hand over fist on the backs of their drug-addicted clients. And after 3 years, the Liberation Way business was sold for over $40 million. But it was an empire built on fraud and despair. And I am so proud that the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania played a part in bringing the charges announced today. Now for some thank yous. I first must thank Assistant United States Attorney Nancy Winter for her dogged investigatory work and analysis. I must also thank our law enforcement partners for this incredible joint effort, and there are many, as you have heard. Of course, the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Health and Human Services, Department of Labor, Office of Personnel Management, and the Florida State Attorney's Office. Each of these entities represented here devoted an incredible amount of time and resources to move this investigation forward, and we would not be here today without every one of them contributing, collaborating, sharing information, sharing resources, and sharing expertise. As Attorney General Shapiro said, this is exactly how law enforcement is supposed to operate, and the U.S. Attorney's Office is proud to be part of it. So now, down to specifics. Federally, the United States has charged 2 individuals with conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud. They are Dr. Ramesh Sarvaiya and Jesse Peters. Defendant Ramesh Sarvaiya is charged with signing the drug test order forms without ever having examined or even meeting the Liberation Way patients. And defendant Jesse Peters is charged with having his laboratories in Florida perform the large volume of unwarranted testing, causing fraudulent claims to be submitted to insurance and kicking back a percentage of the insurance proceeds to his co-conspirators. The U.S. government charged these individuals because combating the opioid epidemic and healthcare fraud abuses are major priorities not only within the Department of Justice, but within the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. In fact, last August, the U.S. Attorney's Office took 2 unique and really unprecedented steps in an effort to combat healthcare fraud head-on. First, our office established a regional Medicare fraud strike force. This strike force has brought together the resources and expertise of our criminal and civil prosecutors, other healthcare fraud prosecutors from within the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., data analysts, and law enforcement agencies, all working together as one cooperative unit to investigate and prosecute cases of waste, fraud, and abuse within our federal healthcare system. With that collection of resources and intense focus, we anticipate that our regional Medicare fraud strike force will have real and measurable impact in combating healthcare fraud. And second, also in August, our office created for the first time an affirmative civil enforcement strike force, or ACE strike force. That is an all-internal strike force comprised of attorneys within our civil division. This strike force is comprised of 5 prosecutors as well as support staff, and their mission is to seek out, investigate, and prosecute in the civil arena large-scale frauds, including groundbreaking work prosecuting healthcare fraud and opioid prescription fraud. Therefore, the U.S. Attorney's Office is uniquely positioned and very motivated to prosecute egregious healthcare frauds that span multiple jurisdictions, just like the one being announced today. And this investigation is a perfect example of why we are doing what we are doing. Now, it goes without saying that the opioid epidemic negatively impacts all of us, and that healthcare fraud impacts our society in a most profound way. The FBI estimates that losses due to healthcare fraud range from 3 to 10% of our annual healthcare spending. To put that in dollars, we lose somewhere between $67 and $226 billion to healthcare fraud every year. That is a cost we pay as healthcare consumers and as taxpayers. But the human cost of the charged frauds is not as easily quantifiable. The victims here are not only the healthcare benefit programs that were defrauded, but also the patients who entrusted their care and treatment to Liberation Way, patients who were seeking guidance to recovery, but were treated instead as profit-generating pawns. It is for these victims that these charges have been brought. Thank you very much, and at this time I'd like to introduce FBI Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Christian Zajac.
Good morning. Liberation Way. For patients, the name likely conjured up visions of a brighter future and hope that they might truly break free from the hold substance abuse had on their lives. From the beginning, though, for the people who ran the show at Liberation Way, the priority wasn't patients, it was profits. Amid a raging opioid crisis, under the guise of recovery, patients were cycled in and out and back again, as if through a revolving door. Medical practices were shoddy and substantive treatment minimal. Instead, the routine was just to order countless unnecessary tests, process them through cooperating labs charging exorbitant prices, and watch the insurance payments roll in. And those payments certainly did roll in to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. And all of it knowingly done at the expense of vulnerable people whose addictions and whose lives hung in the balance. Talk about shameless. Talk about deplorable. I'd like to commend the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office for its outstanding investigative work in their pursuit of this case and the close collaboration with the FBI's investigative team. Also, I'd like to commend the efforts of Office of Personnel Management, Health and Human Services, OIG, and the Department of Labor. The FBI, alongside our state and federal partners, is committed to investigating and bringing justice to those defrauding this country's vital health care system. And with that, I'll turn it back over to General Shapiro.
Okay, with that, we'd be happy to do our best to answer questions. And Jeff, so you don't have to scream out the first question, I'll just call on you first. How about that?
Thank you very much. So I'll ask two. Do you know of any patients who were, in a sense, you said they've almost allowed to sort of become addicted again so that they could charge again and charge at higher rates. You know of any patients who died during that process?
I don't know of any, well, let me say it this way. I don't know if the conduct of those who we are charging from Liberation Way led to someone overdose and dying, but I don't know that their conduct didn't lead to that either. What I know is that they didn't get the care that they needed. They didn't get the care that was warranted. And instead what occurred was these individuals profited off of the pain of these individuals who were battling addiction.
Did you tell Blue Cross that they were being tagged by these guys, or did they come to you? Did they figure it out? Did you have to tell them?
We had a very good working relationship with IBC during this process. They are grateful for our work. I've spoken directly to their CEO, Dan Hilferty, and they were an important part of this investigation.
Josh, can you describe the pattern, the vortex, if you will, for families who were dealing with some of their loved ones struggling and looking for help from this company, the vortex that they were caught in, the revisiting? I think you mentioned there was a case where a patient had been back there as many as 8 times.
I think, look, anyone who knows someone who's been battling addiction, and I think at this point we all do, it's not just the individual who's struggling who's going through the battle. It's the entire family. It's their network of friends and at times their coworkers. And so you struggle to get people into the care that they really need. And then what made matters worse here was these individuals, the family members, thought they were doing the right thing by getting their loved one into care. But that care was obviously, as I stated, subpar, if it was happening at all. And it was not leading to them being able to kick their addiction and to get well. And so the frustration we heard from families throughout this process was meaningful to us. It fueled our efforts. It made us want to get to the bottom of this case. It made all of our partners more dedicated than ever to not only hold these folks from Liberation Way accountable, as we're doing here today, but to make sure that those who need help can get proper help and deal with their addiction.
A brief follow-up, if I can get your reaction to the fact that you mentioned 3 or 4 times that this is a priority for your office, battling the opioid epidemic, and to know that there are businesses capitalizing, preying on people caught in this. Your personal reaction to that and what you see before you.
Well, look, I said on day one that battling the heroin and fentanyl and opioid epidemic would be my top priority. That we would go to the street corners, that we would go to doctors' offices, we'd go to the boardrooms of insurance companies. We would go wherever it took in order to help deal with this crisis. This is yet another example of that. This office arrests on average 5 drug dealers a day every single day we've been in office. You were with us when we had that huge bust in Kensington just the other day. We have increased our diversion arrests, where doctors divert legal prescription drugs for illegal use, by more than 50% in the 2 years since I've been in office, thanks in large measure to the great federal state task forces that we have. We are also using the tools of other divisions within our office, not just the Bureau of Narcotics Investigations, but as you see here today, the insurance fraud unit, some of the civil actors we have in this office, to come at this in a holistic way. And so when I see people taking advantage of those in need, notwithstanding all this good work the office is doing and that our partners at the federal level are doing, it sickens me. It angers me, and it should anger every single Pennsylvanian that people like this exist, but it should also make them feel comforted in knowing that we're here to take them down when they profit off of other people's pain.
General, how much of this was driven by Mr. Gerner and Mr. Fetterman?
Well, we worked with a number of individuals in this case. It was an extensive and complex investigation, and it was as a result of input from a lot of people and the observations of the conduct of a number of folks, Fetterman and Gerner being at the top of that list.
Are you concerned that? I'm sorry.
Can you speak to the employees of the company who were not part of the scheme, who didn't know management was doing this and were just trying to earn a living?
I could say that several of them assisted our investigation. I would say in general terms, I'm not speaking specifically about any one person. They're trying to do the right thing, which is to help people get well. And unfortunately for some of them, they became unwittingly became part of this scheme.
What made the patients believe that they could get health care for free now? They were getting opioid treatment for free. It didn't occur to them that that's often odd in America?
Well, I think that there are a number of ways people get treatment. There are a number of subsidized programs. And I think what people were looking for was to get help. Their families were looking to get them help. And they were taken advantage of in this process. Take a couple more questions.
That is obviously not a template. Can you just speak to the pervasiveness of
this nationwide?
The pervasiveness of the insurance fraud or otherwise?
Specifically with the opioids.
Look, as I said, whether it's a dealer on the street corner or some insurance company or doctor or whatever the case may be, we're coming at this with the full force of the Office of Attorney General, with the full collaboration and cooperation of our partners. We see this as a real threat to people getting better, as a reason why the crisis continues, and we're taking these kinds of investigations very seriously. These are not easy investigations. The work that Rob and Christy and our team did here is extraordinarily difficult, it's time-consuming, and it's complex. But the effect of their work is not just to hold the individuals accountable, who you saw get arrested today, but it also sends a very clear message that we're not going to tolerate this, that we won't stand for this, and that we are watching. And that, I hope, will have a real impact on the industry.
How soon can we expect more federal charges to be filed, if at all, for other individuals involved?
I'm sorry, I can't speak to anything that's not of public record.
You're not going to charge
I was going to say that, but I figured.
What about tax charges for these guys? You almost hit people with tax charges here. They made a lot of money here.
Well, I will tell you that this is certainly an ongoing investigation, as you heard earlier. As of now, we have 2 conspiracy charges, but it is ongoing.
Is the U.S. Attorney concerned that our healthcare system, our private healthcare system, is this vulnerable to fraud? I mean, you obviously have hit them now, but they were banging away and pulled a lot of money out of private insurers before anybody caught them.
We are very confident now with our Medicare fraud strike force, our ACE strike force, that we are well positioned to find individuals who are taking advantage of the system and committing healthcare fraud. We will investigate them and we will prosecute them.
What about the private insurance industry, though? What are they doing to keep fraud out of their own? I mean, Blue Cross is playing out the nose here.
We are very aggressively investigating all allegations of healthcare fraud in all arenas.
Great. Thank you all very much for being here. Thank you.
And that is going to do it for Fox 29 News Now on this Monday. We'll be back at our regular time, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and fox29.com for the latest breaking news. Thanks for watching.